Hello and welcome to Slapendipity, Hobos of Happy Slappy Town, episode 48. My name is Devon, but you can call me Gibby, and I am here with Eric, who you can call Eric.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Are you saying hello to me, or are you saying hello to the fine people at home?
Why not both?
Because if you're talking to them, then I won't feel special, and if you're talking to me, then they won't feel special.
And therefore I say, why not both? You can both feel not special.
Eric, have you ever felt pressured to make someone feel special?
I guess so, in like a... Not... I've never thought about it, but I guess so. Like when you go on
you go on a what?
When you go on a date or something, and it's like, oh, I'm not thinking that I have to make them feel special, but like, I guess the point of a date is to make them feel special, but I just don't go in like, I have to make sure they feel all fizzy inside and find $1 million on the floor.
Have you been on any dates recently?
Devin, we've both been on dates recently. Speed dates.
What? Is that what I was segueing to this whole time?
It could be, or you could be talking about how a level of entitlement exists as a human condition.
One human condition? There's like near mint condition, conditioning for your hair, and then entitlement. Those are the 3 human conditions.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Okay.
I'm not gonna fight it.
Let's talk about our speed dating experience. This is speed dating for me, number 3, and for you, number 4. A New Hope. Okay, so tell me about your thoughts, because we talked about this. Obviously, we were there together, had the same. We were in the same room, talked to all the same people. But we haven't talked about our sort of overall thoughts on the specific, particular experience. So I want to hear from you. What did you think? What was your preparation going in? What was your feelings? What were your comments? What if you had to like write a review for the speed dating that we went on? How many stars would you give it? What would you say to the host? What went on in your little head?
Head empty for beforehand, during, and after. 5 out of 5 stars. They need the reviews.
What made you give 5 out of 5 stars?
My head was empty, so there was no thing
you have no thoughts on the matter, and so that defaults to 5 stars.
In this instance, yeah. I mean, the speed dating is just a facilitating of the meeting of people, as long as it's a place that provides shelter and maybe tea, then, like, what else do you need? I don't know. I think less is more in the case of a company hosting a speed dating event. Like, I don't want them to be like, here's a piñata, and oh my gosh, we're gonna make a party. Like, no, I'm just here to talk to people, see if we vibe, and leave.
Would you say that the role of a meal is to facilitate your body getting energy?
It can be. You can also have a meal for taste.
You go to a restaurant, and I say, how was the food there? And you say, it facilitated me gaining energy. 5 stars. In my opinion, that tells me absolutely nothing.
I mean, I think there's big differences between food and speed date company person.
Why?
Because food, you're going there for the taste, you're going there for the ba-ba-ba, you're going for ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Sure, you don't want it to just be...
You don't see how there's an equivalent of taste at something like a social function?
I don't think you can factor in taste into the company's role. What are they going to do? They're going to curate who is allowed to come to their event that people have paid money for? What do you people buy tickets and then people show up. What's the company gonna do? Be like, oh, you're not hot enough to show up at this event, actually. Sorry, we don't want your money.
Well, I think that there's other roles that the speed dating company has besides curating the people there. I don't think they should curate the people there. But for the 3 experiences I've been to, I would give the first one a B, the second one a C-, and this one like an A-.
Okay. Well, tell me why.
Tell you why. Well, the first one was outside, and it was hot. It was cold, and then it was hot. Sun was in my eyes. I did think that the hostess was very well spoken. I think she explained the rules pretty well. I felt like there was a lot of time to... Obviously, the time was the same in each one. But I felt like there was a good balance of the... I'm going to say downtime between each person. And I think part of that was facilitated by the fact that the tables were so far apart. Second one we went to, I think very, very poor. The space was too small. It was way too hot indoors. And I could not hear almost anything. Just too loud, too many people in the small space. And I think much less, less structure. When we first started, there were, this was in a cafe, and so there were what I'm going to call booths, a big booth along the wall, and then tables, and then chairs on the other side of the tables. The way that these function is typically one gender sits and doesn't move, and the other gender rotates to the other tables. So when the hostess said, okay, everyone, like, take your seats at your numbered table, sometimes the men got in the booth, and other tables had women in the booth. So then the hostess had to basically, like, correct everyone and be like, no, so the men are going to be in the booth because they're not going to move, and the women need to be in the chairs. Meaning that some tables, some couples had to, like, stand up and awkwardly move, and again, there's no room. I'm like, oh, okay, this is like a little cluster muffin before we even get started. And in that instance, I think that the hostess was a little less well-spoken, going over the rules and setting the tone. I did appreciate that she gave you a shout-out because you had recommended the space. And then this time, I think it was pretty similar. I think that the hostess was a little flustered. I think that the tone wasn't set super well. There was an incident, I'm going to call it an incident, it was not that dramatic, where each table is numbered so that you know where to start, and she accidentally skipped the number 3, so that was a whole thing. And so that was like whatever. But I think that this facility was the best of the 3 that I've been to so far. It was a bigger cafe, and I think there was just more space, and it wasn't as loud. I think it was kind of weird that there were very different styles of tables. Like, sometimes you're sitting across from the person. Sometimes you're, like, sitting next to them. It's like you facing inward and then the table and then them facing inward, which was odd. Someone had to sit on, like, a couch, meaning that the 2 people who were talking to each other had to, like, be on the same... It's more like a love seat. So, like, there's no space between you and you're kind of facing each other, like, sitting on a couch. It was very, like, oh, that kind of makes me uncomfortable. That's whatever. And then, yeah, it had some hiccups, but I think overall was the best one. And so if I were to, like, review my experiences at these social functions, not even talking about the people who were there or the speed dates themselves, I think that each one offered something differently. And I think that if I'd been to the small venue first, I would have maybe not even gone to a second one. Whereas if I'd been to this one first, I would have been like, yo, speed dating is lit, fam. So that's how I would review them. Yeah.
I mean, fair enough. There is a certain amount that, like, the hosts and hostesses could have done, like, being more prepared or whatever. But also, like, it being small isn't... I mean, they could have scoped it out better and planned around it better, but, like, if the space is small, the space is small. That's just an unfortunate aspect. I mean, yeah, you could plan around it, but I don't think there's too much you could have done. So
they're also they have these icebreaker cards.
Yes.
And they kind of put a couple on each table.
Yes.
And in the first one, it was explained, like, you don't have to use these are whatever. Second and third one, not even mentioned. So I had an incident, again, I'm going to keep saying incident, by which I mean a thing that happened. I had an incident in this most recent experience where I sat down with someone and she was just like, oh, we're supposed to ask questions of each other on these cards. And so our entire conversation was just like these inane card questions. And I think if the hostess had said, you don't need to ask questions. They're just there, like, just in case. Like, if you have literally nothing to talk about and you just want to, like, kill the 5 minutes. Which is what she did say the first time. And so I kind of think, as someone who's experienced with public speaking, I feel like each time you give the same presentation, you should, like, get better, right? Like, you stop saying the things that don't work and you emphasize the things that you found to work best as you continue to do them. I will say, I don't think this is the hostess's fault, because I don't believe that she really gets feedback from us. Like, if I were to talk to her, I'd basically say what I just said. She might not know that I found it extremely important the first time that we all sat down, for her to be, like, smiling the whole time, and for her to, like, have very positive energy, be giving off good vibes, you know? And to explain, like, how the function worked as opposed to the second and third time when it was just kind of a free-for-all.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I guess there's a thing for, you know, how do you explain the rules to newcomers, but also not make it repetitive for people that have been going? Which
I think you just don't bother with the second one. If you've had such a good experience, you're going to keep coming to these, then I don't think that the 30-second introduction speech, it's kind of like if you've been on a plane a lot, you're not going to be like, oh man, we have to listen to the flight attendant give the same speech every time. Boring. It's like, no, it's just part of it. When I go to the movie theater and it says, please silence your cell phone, I don't be like, oh man, I've seen 100 movies. I already know this information. They shouldn't even have this. I'm like, yeah, that's just part of going to the movies.
That's fair. I bet you people do think about that with the cell phones, though. I bet you there are people that are like, I know, I already have it on airplane mode or whatever. Get to the movie.
It takes a whole 20 extra seconds to go through the put your phone away slide. And it's like, if there is ever someone on a phone in your theater, you can at least be like, ugh, they're breaking the rules. I'm getting a manager.
You should just tap it on the shoulder and be like, I'll see you outside. And then you just make them live in fear.
One time when I was managing the movie theater, someone came out and was like, there's this person on their phone. And I was like, okay. And so I go in and I walk over and I was like, hello, ma'am, please, you're not allowed to be on your phone. Because, like, everyone knows that, right? If someone's, like, talking or doing something weird, I have to go in and be like, excuse me, sir, you cannot do that. But when it's on your phone, I'm like, ma'am, you cannot be on your phone in a movie. And she looks up at me with a nasty snarl and she said, is it bothering you? Because I'm guessing that she assumed that I was another patron and that I had taken it upon myself to, like, go and confront her. And I was just like, ma'am, I'm the manager here and I can kick you out if you don't put your phone away. And then she was like, me. And that's how I remember it going down. I think she put her phone away.
How do you not know? I need the epic conclusion.
I mean, no, she put her phone away, but, like, typically what we do if there's disruptions like that is I'll go back in and check on them every 5 minutes, and I have this whole song and dance where I, like, look in, I make myself super visible, and then I pretend to leave, but I don't, to make sure that they're not just, like, going back to doing it when I'm not there. I peek my head, like, around this little corner, and I'm like, are they still doing it? They don't know I'm here, do they? And I think that's really fun, especially when it's teenagers who are, like, yapping. If I walk away and I come back, or if I pretend to leave, and sometimes I'll go and I'll, like, open the door just in case they can, like, hear it, and then close the door but stay in. And if I hear them go back to yapping, I'm immediately on that. I am like, nope! 2 strikes, mister.
So, what do they give it? 2 strikes?
For me, my policy was 3 strikes and you get kicked out and there's no refunds. So, like, sucks nerd.
So what I'm hearing is you have given the dating speed 0 strikes?
No, I mean, I wouldn't give the speed dating thing any amount of strikes. I was just curious because I wanted to know your thoughts on this experience compared to the other ones, and you said that you couldn't review it, and I'm like, that's crazy because I can.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting on going on this tangent. I just kind of assumed that you would answer the question.
I just don't care that much, I guess. I mean, not enough to, like, review. I do agree that the place I recommended was kind of small and, like, there could have been a slightly better use of space, but also they needed to, you know, have people there, and they only had 10, and it was like, oof. Well, 10 of each people, like 20 people.
20, yeah.
Plus the staff, plus the host. So, like, maybe it just actually wasn't that good of a spot. Whoops. But
I just think it was on them
like,
to have fewer people.
I guess. But then it's like, here's 5 people of each gender. Haha, this is gonna take half an hour. And I think everyone would be more upset than that than have, like, 10 people of each gender and then not hearing. Regardless, I to me, that's just a thing where you talk about it with your friend if you go with a friend, and you complain about it for 5 minutes, as well as the rest of the stuff, and then you just don't think about it. And you move on to the next thing. But it's good that you like this one, so what, you want to share any stories from it, or?
Sure, so it was a whole... I'm going to say it's a whole thing. I'm going to call it an incident. I'm just going to keep using that over-the-top language to describe mundane, minor things. So you might recall that we got there a little early. It was kind of a drive. It was like a 45-minute drive for us. And so we got there just a little early, and we walked past the storefront and saw that no other patrons were there yet. It was just the lady setting up. And so we decided to just go for a walk, and we walked down 2 blocks, and we were chilling, and then we were on our way back. And I made a comment. Do you remember my comment?
Is that an arcade?
No, my comment about the speed dating.
It looks nice?
No, so my comment was, I kind of forgot that we were doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't prepare for it. The other 2 times, I mean, we talked about it on the show. I also talked about it with a lot of people in my life. Like, what am I going to say? What if this happens? What if that happens? This time I was just sort of like so used to it, I kind of knew what it was going to be like, and so I didn't think about it. But I didn't think about it so much that it wasn't until we were 10 feet from the door that I was like, oh yeah, that's why we're actually here. Oh god, I need to perform now. I need to be smart. I need to remember what I'm supposed to say.
Okay, and how did that go? Did you end up doing that?
I feel like this was my worst quote-unquote performance.
Okay.
As far as the things I talked about. I did open this by asking you something about people pleasing, I think.
You did.
Yeah. So
did
I kind of feel
people?
I don't know. I feel like the first 2 I was very confident in my answers. Whereas this one I was just kind of yapping. I think it's because the first 2 times we went, I was very self-conscious about coming off as a normal and cool guy. I wanted the people, everyone, even if I'm not interested, even if I'm repulsed by the person I'm talking to, I wanted them to walk away and be like, what a nice young man. This time, if I wasn't if I knew I was going to circle no on the person, I just kind of stopped caring. And so I think overall, if you were to poll every woman that we've talked to across these 3 speed dating things, I think, and I have no idea if this is true, but I think in the first 2, I would have gotten overall higher reviews than in this 3rd one.
I mean, maybe. That's
At
wild.
least I think I did better.
I mean, sure. That's more so what counts. It's crazy you're so fixated on, reviews.
I think it's crazy you're not fixated on reviews.
You just go in and you vibe and you see what happens.
Okay, now explain to me, describe that vibe.
You, I don't know, you just sit down and start talking.
You can't describe the vibe, you can't describe your feelings, you can't do whatever, you gotta be introspective, you gotta know what you're feeling and also why you're feeling it. You gotta articulate.
What you want about Sokka?
You gotta be able to explain why you feel the way that you do. And that's the same as a review.
How does that relate to the vibes?
What were the vibes? All you said was there were vibes, or you go in and you expect to have vibes. That tells me nothing. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Why am I giving the review other than you asked for one? I wouldn't qualify anything as a review. I wouldn't be
I would
like,
call-
oh, the lighting was dim and the people were loud and I'm never gonna go again.
No, I'm saying tell me what the vibes were. All you said was you go in and you try to vibe. I don't know what that means.
You just relax and wing it.
So the vibes are relaxed.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you originally said you go in and vibe, you could have equally said you go in a relaxed state.
That's on you for not knowing language.
But vibe can mean many things. Relaxed only means relaxed.
No, but I think vibe has come to a point where it mostly means relax. Unless it's like, what are the vibes?
Yeah, if I
then
go
you're
to a
checking
concert,
out the mood.
If I go to a concert and I talk about the vibes, I don't think anyone's going to interpret that as me saying that they were relaxed. It's like, yo, it was a bop, y'all.
Sure, but there's a difference between, like, what are the vibes, here were the vibes, and then, like, I'm going in this to vibe, you know, if you're using it as a verb rather than whatever those other things I said were.
I think that, like, the root of saying that you go into vibe is basically, like, you go in, you read the emotion of the room, and then you copy that, and you go with the flow, right? If you're going into vibe, then you're going with the flow. But if I don't know what the flow is, then that still tells me nothing.
Perhaps.
Mayhaps. So what were the vibes?
It was chill. Everyone liked this, well, seemingly liked the space. I didn't see anyone that, like, hated it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people were, I don't know about you. I feel like half of the people that were there were either like, this is my first time, or like, this is my second, third, fourth, whatever time. Not first. Or I feel like previous ones, there were so many more people that were like, oh, this is my first time ever doing this, because I feel to be quirky and get out there and put myself out there. And it's January. Maybe that's why.
People got New Year's resolutions. Instead of doing bingo cards, resolutions. Yeah. I'm going to go speed date. I'm going to put myself back out there.
Yeah. Well, and that's what some of the people said, not New Year's resolutions, perhaps, but like, I figured I'd put myself out there, so I'm doing this. It's like, oh. It didn't even hit me until now that it's like, it's January. This is a reason, maybe, as to why you're doing this. Crazy.
So I typically ask if it's their first time or not, and I think that almost everyone there said it was. I only recall 2 people saying that they've been to these like 2 or 3 times. With that said, none of them had been at the ones that we were at. Like, right. We've yet to have a repeat customer.
Yeah.
What kind of questions did you ask people?
Customer?
Me and you are repeat customers. None of them, as far as I knew, had been to the other
sure
ones. What kind of questions did you ask?
I mean, typical questions. How are you? How's your night? How do you feel about this? I also ask, like, what, is this your first time doing this or whatever? But the question that you want me to reveal is, I asked people, if you had to describe yourself as a body of water, what would it be and why? Because I heard that question, and I was like, that's great, but then the answer I received, I think I told this, from someone I knew, they were described as a well. And I was like, that's a fantastic answer. I have to try this on speed dating. And when I didn't ask every single person, sometimes I just forgot, or the other person was more assertive with their questions, and it's not that deep. So, from the people that I did ask it, which I'd say was maybe half, like 8 people, they all said they loved it and it was an interesting question. And they could have been just nice and trying to please expectations or whatever.
So you're saying that they gave you a review of your questions toward them during your speed date?
Yeah, I guess. I wouldn't say that's a review.
I would.
This was a great
after-action
question.
report.
4 out of 5 stars. It made me tingle on the inside. No, it was... Wow, what a question. This beats the, like, what do you do for work?
So that's a review. Okay. So one of the things I found interesting is that other people, because I've had the women I'm talking to tell me this, I've also had you say this, that one of the, like, ubiquitous questions people asked is how old the other person was.
Yeah.
I have never once asked any of these people that question.
Okay.
With that said, I've asked every single one. My questions are, what is your job? What are your hobbies? Whereas, as you just said, you typically don't ask people what their jobs are.
Oh, this time around, I've asked people what their jobs are.
But is that your opening question? Because that is always my opening question.
My opening question is like, hi, how are you? How's your night going?
See, I feel like that might be a toward the end question if, like, you've kind of run out of things to say. Just that's when I will sometimes ask, like, oh, is this the first time coming to one of these? How is it going?
Well, here.
I feel like, yeah.
I'll give you a real review, right? You want to breakdown by breakdown. You sit down at the chair, you're both looking at each other awkward and anxiously, and then you're listening to the lady and the bell happens and you blah. So you both are flustered, or at least you can pretend to be flustered. So then you go, and like, in your chair, already sitting down, just kind of like, visibly like, re-sit down, redefine yourself in your space. And then you look at the person, having visibly just done this, and you go, huh. Do an exhale, a sigh of some sort, and go, oh my gosh, so sorry. Hi, how are you? Because you are also writing down their name and their number, and there's things to keep track of, and they're keeping track of things. So then you do this visual and audible reset with the person. And then that brings you into a more agreeable space, and then you can be like, so how's your night going? Isn't this crazy? The question is then set up by the context of everything that just happened.
See, I always ask their job, and then typically that will lead into other more personal questions if they have an interesting job. Because as far as I'm concerned, like, those are the important questions, right? Like, you go in not knowing anything about the person.
Uh-huh.
And then it's like, you can sort of rule people out based on, I'll say, vibes, right? You can rule based on, like, how you feeling, just talking, if they can hold a conversation, if they're, like, normal, and then finding out what they do for a living. People like talking about what they do, typically.
Oh, people love to talk about themselves. Look at us.
Yeah, so if you do that, then you get the good answers, and you don't need to ask what kind of body of water you are, or if you do, that's toward, like, the end of the conversation. Get some deeper insight into people that you're interested in, as opposed to asking that and then, like, not even knowing what they do for work.
But why do I need to know what they do for work?
Because you're looking to date them.
No, I'm looking to go on another date. That's different. I can go on another date with them and then find out what they do for work and then go, never mind. And based on whatever other factors.
So I think that is something that you should just learn from the speed date.
But I'm not going to be like, you work as a data analyst, so 1940s. No thank you.
Well, again, asking what they do facilitates them talking about more general things, because as you said, people like talking about themselves, and I think people like talking about what they do. And so
yes,
I think it opens people up.
It could, yeah. I think it's not as interesting of a route. I feel like people, from my experience with this, like when you ask, like, oh, what's your job? They then, like, you're locked into the path, right? It's like, let me explain what my job is, and then let me reciprocate the question, and then, oh, what do you do? And then you're just in the path of, like, what do you do for work? What's your hobbies? How old are you? And then 5 minutes is up. When you could just, like, have a fun conversation. And if you just have a fun conversation, you can be like, wow, I enjoyed my time with them. And so then I will circle yes. And then if I find out, at a later point that other things, then I can make my decision from there.
See, again, I'm not saying like you're wrong or I disagree. I'm just saying
Sure,
that to
different.
me, that's just the exact opposite of what I
Mm,
do. And so I'm questioning, right? So I talked to one of the people on the date, and then you're next, right? That's just the way that the cycle was this time. And
yes.
so we just go up and we're just asking the exact opposite questions. We're flip flopping. We're throwing them through the ringer. I'm asking, what is your job? What are your hobbies? What do you do on weekends? What do you do with blah blah blah? And then you come up and you're like, what's your favorite body of water? Let's just
No,
vibe.
what's your favorite? How would you describe yourself as one?
How would you describe?
But that wasn't my opening question, and I would still let them ask questions to me. It's not like I tried to dominate the conversation.
So what kind of questions were you asked?
What do you do for work? What do you like to do for
Hmm.
fun?
Interesting, interesting.
Listen, I'm not saying it's wrong or bad or whatever, but I think you could just have not more of a conversation, but like, just have different conversations. That could be more entertaining, perhaps.
Wouldn't I mean, I see it as like every conversation you have. There were about 13 people there this time. 13 women, 13 men.
Nah, 14? I thought it was
14.
16.
You know, it doesn't matter. There was teens amount of people.
Teens
And
amount
in
of
my
people.
opinion, every conversation should be the same so that you can compare the people's answers. If I have one conversation that's very specific and I learn a lot about the person and the other one that's very vibes based, then I feel like I can't compare those two people to know, like, okay, which ones am I circling yes and which ones am I circling no on. I have nothing to compare them with if I didn't have the same conversation. I think you got to approach it, it's a science, right? You don't change the variable. The only variable you're changing is the person you're speaking to. You don't change the questions you're asking or the way you answer them. You give the exact same performance each time.
Well, again, neither of us are bad or wrong. This is just interesting, though. I would say it's an art because, uh, first of all, you have other deciding factors, right? Like, uh, if you're attracted to them, if the conversation is good, you can know if the conversation is good without having to ask the same questions. And if you're not attracted to the person, depending on how big of a factor that is for you, you can then slide that scale around and then like, oh, I don't have any interest in this person because that is a very important factor for me, so I'm just gonna have a more interesting conversation or try to, rather than get the science side by side notes, because what's the point in getting the science side by side notes if you already have your determined conclusion? Admittedly, a shallow approach. But also, if you're doing the same conversation for 2 hours, I think that would just kind of be boring. Not for, like for me at least, it would be boring to just, hi, American, hi, American.
I feel like that's exactly what you should do. Because, and here's, I
Well,
guess this is a tip for anyone, but like for
mm-hmm,
me, again, I went to every conversation, the pleasantries, right? Hi, how are you? Blah, blah, blah. And then it was, what do you do for a living?
mm-hmm.
One of them sat down and she immediately just told me what she did for a living. She didn't ask me. She didn't say, oh, this is what I do for a living. Sat down and it's just like, I do this. I'm from here. This is the kind of stuff I'm interested in, blah, blah, blah. And
Mm-hmm.
then it was my turn to talk. She didn't ask me. She didn't say, oh, and what do you do? She was
Mm-hmm.
done. And I just immediately picked up the vibe, the flow of the conversation. And I said what I did. And I then turned I'm like, oh, I do this, this is my job. And then I made a comment like, oh, but in April, I'm going to Japan for a month because like that's part of what I do, right? Part of my job is going to be I'm taking it off for a month to go visit another country. That's something I can do because I don't have a 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then that turned into her having her opinion on travel and on things like that and like what she would like to do. And so then we talked about travel. And then that kind of circled back around to like other hobbies and whatever. And so we talked about the same things. It was always, what do you do for work? What's your, I would bring up Japan because it's like a big thing that's going to be coming shortly in our lives. And then, like, what are your hobbies? What do you like? What do you dislike? But this conversation, the flow was very different because of her personality. And so that was the one, the one scientific change, quote unquote, was her. The conversation was the same as with everyone else. But because only one variable was changed, which is the human being I'm speaking to, I was able to determine what she was like, as opposed to having different conversations with everyone. And she ended up being the only person that I circled yes on.
Well, so I would say the conversation wasn't the same. It was in, what, function, but not in something.
Content.
Yes, because she was the variable that changed it, but that doesn't... You're then relying on any one person you circle to be the gold goose or whatever of like, whoa, they were different, so I'm gonna respond to that, as opposed to just being different yourself for each one and then doing whatever. Not that you have to be.
Well, I wouldn't say that they were different, which is why I circled them. I would say that they were the best, which is why I circled them.
And they were the best because they were different.
No.
Because you didn't have to ask any of the questions, and she was immediately launched into her things. The entire way of the conversation was different from everyone else, and therefore she was the best because of what she did.
The content of the conversation was the best, but the function, as you just said, was the same because they were all the same questions, and we covered basically the same topics as everyone else. The only thing that changed was the person.
Right. So you're saying if you still had to ask all of the questions and whatever, and she gave all of the same things, that wouldn't have changed anything that you think?
Technically, no, because her answers to the questions were also things that I find desirable. We clicked. I think that we clicked. But I would just say that I'm not rating these people on conversations. That's not why you say yes to a second date, right? Like, what a person does, unless it's a major red flag or a major, like, green flag or something, isn't going to impact whether or not I would want to go on a second date with them. It's the way that they present themselves in the conversation and the things like that, right? If someone says, I'm a whatever you said, data analyst, I'd be like, that's interesting. Like, I'm not going to say no or yes to you because you're a data analyst. But if you're like, I'm a data analyst, versus being like, hey, I'm a data analyst, I've been in the field for 6 years, I'm really, really good at it, I make this much money, and I think it's really cool, I get weekends off, and so, when I have those weekends off, I like to play board games. I'm going to be like, you seem really cool and interesting.
There's also another key difference between us.
Yeah, I think there's a major difference.
Well, in general, yeah, sure, but specifically with speed dating, I am not afraid to circle more than yes on, like, 5 people. Yes, I think, are.
You circled yes on almost all of them, and I have so far not circled yes on more than one person in all 3 of our outings. Well, it was one person per outing, and the second one was just like well, I don't really want to date this person, but if I don't circle yes, then what was the point? And then she didn't match with me, which I was happy about. So, yes, I am much more like, I'm only going to circle yes if I actually want to speak to this person again. Whereas, I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like the only people you'd circle no on are people you overtly do not want to see again.
Yeah, kind of. I think there's also just something to, like, we have 5 minutes. If I enjoy the conversation well enough, then we can just hang out again. And then if I don't like you from that, then I don't have to hang out with you. The amount of time, effort, and energy I have to put into another date, to me, is pretty minimal. So I don't find it as like a waste or a risk or a whatever. Because you can always just move forward from whatever decision you make afterwards.
Yeah, and I am the exact opposite. I feel like if I'm putting in that effort, it has to be because I already like this person's company. The idea of just dating, of just going on a date with someone who I don't see a future with, is just like the worst thing I could possibly imagine.
Well, it's not that there's like, it's not that I'm like, oh, your company is so I'll go on a date with you. But it's just like, I don't know. I think it's just a limiting way of getting to know someone. And the point of dating is to get to know them, not to like, I mean, sure, one day to like marry and whatever.
Yes. The point of dating is to marry someone.
Is. No, the point of dating is to get to know them, to see if you would want to marry them. You can't be like, within 5 minutes, be like, oh, I'm going to marry you. Like, that's not how the world works at this point in time in this current location.
But you can know within 5 minutes that you're not going to marry someone. Easily. I think that is a very, very uncontroversial, easy thing to say. It's a very easy judgment.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that.
Really?
I think it's easier than if you are going to marry them. But I could see a situation where, like, oh, I go on a date with this person just because, or, like, again, their company was good enough and I would be somewhat interested in talking to them and whatnot. And then just along the way, you're like, whoa, maybe I will marry this person because XYZ.
But I think that there are disqualifying red flags that you could easily pick up on within 5 minutes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, right.
So yeah, we go into these same events with sort of opposite intentions and then opposite structures to get that end goal, which is why I'm so interested in your take on the experience, because we go in and we experience them in almost opposite ways with the intention of coming out of them with almost opposite results. And so I want to know how you feel about them. And your review was that you vibe.
Whoa. None of this was set up. You didn't present like you were trying to learn X from me. You were just like, so what was your review of this? And I went, what do you mean? And then you didn't explain it.
The purpose of
until now
is to learn. The purpose of a review is to learn about a person.
The purpose of me leaving a review that Bullet Train was a good movie is for you to learn that I thought Bullet Train was a good movie.
Yes, that's literally the only purpose of a review. If I don't know what your tastes are, then the review is meaningless.
Not feedback to the creators, or...
But the creator's not going to hear your review.
Well, but upon a sea of many, they will. They'll get the vibe, at least.
The vibe of the general population.
Public. Yes,
not
which
a particular person.
Right. But if you don't leave a review, then... and then you apply that to everyone, then how will the creator know the vibe?
Yeah, so like let's talk about Bullet Train. I really liked Bullet Train, but I like
movie.
Fall Guy better.
Okay.
Good movie, but I like because Fall Guy is PG-13, and I think that Bullet Train had a lot of R-rated content that I think actually detracted from the overall quality of the movie. Now, there's other people out there who might actually enjoy that R-rated content more than the PG-13 content of Fall Guy, or it might just not, quote-unquote, bother them. And so I think that when I give that review, what you're learning about is my tastes as opposed to the quality of the movie. You can learn about the content of the movie. You can learn that one is rated R and one is PG-13, but you're not going to learn the quality, because all I'm saying is I don't like rated R movies as much as I like rated PG-13 movies. And so you, who that doesn't affect, that doesn't bother, you don't have that same opinion, you have now learned nothing about the movies themselves, the quality of them.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
I don't think that anyone listening to this podcast wants to know the quality of the women that we speed dated. I think they want to know about you and how you reacted to it, and about me and how I reacted to it.
Sure, yeah. For the record, I'd like to think I am an introspective person. I just don't care about reviews, I guess, and then never thought about them in such a way.
But you can be introspective, but not be... I don't want to say that you're not articulate, but if you're not expressing what you've learned...
Sure.
Then what is the purpose of being introspective?
Sure, sure. I feel like some of it got away. Anyway, so what do we? What now? This is
Well,
great.
I already
This is fantastic.
I already said that I got a match. I matched with the one person who I liked.
Oh, sure.
There was someone else who I almost said yes to. I feel like if the one girl I really liked hadn't been there, I would have said yes to the other one. But it was just kind of on that border.
Interesting. It's almost like you could have circled yes to two people.
The difficulty in, let's say that I circled yes to two people and they both circled yes to me. Now I have to set up 2 first dates. I need to make sure they're not on the same day. And then what I'll be doing is comparing the 2 first dates between these people. Like, oh, I have to go and expend the energy to talk to one person on Tuesday and the other person on Wednesday. And because I already kind of like one of them better, I would just be wasting the second person's time. It's not like it's, oh man, this is a coin toss. It's, oh, this person's a maybe, but this person's a yes. I kind of feel like I would be doing a disservice to the person who I almost circled, if I had circled her.
It's not a disservice to confirm yes or no onto this person. You know, maybe you go on the date and you actually have a really great time and you learn more about them and you're like, whoa, now it is a toss-up between them. You can't know that unless you go on the date, though.
So if I was speaking to 2 women,
Uh-huh.
and one of them knew that, hey, I kind of went into this with you in second place, but as a result of this, it is now a coin flip. I think that that's not something somebody would like to hear. Even
Don't
if it's a
tell
compliment,
them.
like, hey,
What do you mean?
you're better than. That sounds like a lie, Eric.
How is
It
that
sounds
a
like
lie?
you're.
What?
I don't know. I have this whole this whole topic I could talk about how like lying changes people's perception of reality. Maybe I'll talk about that one day in April. I don't know.
That's not lying to some. If you circle yes on 2 people and go on 2 different first dates, and you have your feelings change, that's not lying. That's your feelings changed. What?
Is not telling them would be altering their perception of reality.
No. What do you? A first date is just a first date. It's not this grand big thing that people dedicate their lives to. It's chance to hang out.
I strongly disagree. I think that,
oh my goodness,
a first date, what are you doing? You're deciding if you're going to marry this person, and so
no!
it is a sort of grand performance of it's almost like the most important thing in the universe. What you're doing is you're connecting with a human being with the potential of like experiencing true love. It's almost like this is the universe acting out its grand plan.
You're assuming the universe has a grand plan, and that's
yes.
what the plan is, which it arguably
Yes.
isn't. There's no way to prove anything. I
disagree. I think you can metaphysically prove things like that. But continue. What do you think?
Well, I'm not touching on the universe stuff, if that's alright. I'm more interested in the dating thing. The first dates and stuff, like, do you know how many people go on first dates and with different people at different times, and that's just like the expected norm. And then once you get to a point with someone where it's like, hey, I want to make this exclusive, or I think we should take this seriously, or whatever, then if you both agree to that, then you like, okay, we're not going to date anyone else, we're not going to do any other first dates or second dates or whatever number with this other person, because now I have committed myself. Dating until both parties agree on being exclusive, or whatever you want to call it, is just getting to know people. It's just with a more romantic context and like expectations, sure, but I wouldn't say those expectations are for marriage, because people would just be like going on the first date and getting married after immediately, which doesn't happen really in our generalized case.
A significant difference between a romantic connection and a non-romantic connection. I think that one of the most beautiful things about like, couples or love, or etc., is that a relationship like that is a dance. There's a yes and a no. There's a this person says that and that person says that. And I think there's sort of inherently correct responses to certain actions or certain questions. And if you're dating multiple people at once, not saying that like, oh, it's the 80s and you can't go on multiple dates. You can't take Susie to the movies and then you take Brenda to the sock hop, right? And then you learn kind of which one you like better, and then you go exclusive with one, right? I'm not saying that like that would be an immoral thing, but what I am saying is that the idea that like I would go on a date with the purpose of potentially entering into a relationship with person A, and then go on a similar date with person B. The idea that that is an easy or desirable thing, I think that if you're dating multiple people at once, the goal is to narrow it down to the one person who you actually would prefer being dating.
Sure.
And that to extend the process of having multiple people is painful and difficult, and and is undesirable.
So that is your opinion. I do know people who just date and have multiple people, and they just have different schedules happening with different people, and it's... I will kind of agree, like, when I hear about it, I'm like, gosh, this is such a web of stuff. How do you keep track?
It sounds exhausting.
However, I don't think it's exhausting to, like, go on dates. Like, if I'm between two people and I'm trying to figure out my feelings and narrow it down or whatever, I'd be like, this is an endeavor that I will... No, endeavor is a poor choice of words. This is a delight that I get to, like, figure out my feelings with these people in this way and so forth and so on. And then it's it's getting to know people. You should be enjoying your time with that, unless they're, like, a horrible person and you learn that the hard way. But,
Well, I inherently think that you're not getting to know people. I think that because of the nature of going on a date, what you're doing is a performance.
No.
And so it's not getting to... I think if it's not that, then it's not a date. But I think that the nature of the idea of the potential romantic connection requires that what you're learning about the person is their romantic tendencies as opposed to, like, who they are. I think that you learn who someone is when you're in a relationship with them, and you cannot learn who someone is when you're dating them, because they're putting the best self forward. Right?
What? Okay.
Like I think that is in fact impossible.
I wouldn't say it's impossible, but sure, people do lead with their best foot forward, and then you, like, move in or whatever, and you're like, oh, cool, I could be a little bit of a slob now. But are you saying people don't get to know each other until they're married, or just living together? Or...
No, neither one. I think it's a level of comfort that comes with, like, accepting the other person, right? I think to be in a relationship, you need to accept who the other person is, right? That's a healthy relationship. You're not trying to change them. Sure. You're not trying to, I think if you're making, like, pros and cons list about a person, you don't actually have feelings for them. It's acceptance of the other person. And if you're in, like, the dating, the not going steady dating multiple people phase, it's impossible to put your true self out there and for the other person to be reciprocal of that.
Why?
Because if you don't know what you feel, if you're deciding between two or more people, if you don't know what you feel, then you can't possibly communicate how you feel to the other person.
But you're just putting your best foot forward, and you were saying...
Well, yeah, but that's not your average self. I think you need to be introspective and articulate, and if you're not introspective and know your answer, you cannot then possibly articulate the answer if you don't know it yourself.
Right. I feel like I missed something.
I don't know what you missed.
I don't know either. I feel like this happens sometimes.
What's your question? What are you confused?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
If dating is best foot forward, then I lost it. It's gone.
If dating is best foot forward, it's not truthful.
If dating is best foot forward, then it's not truthful.
Yeah, so therefore you're not getting to know people.
But you said you can't know them when you're dating.
No, and we're explicitly saying dating before any sort of again, I'll use the phrase going steady, right? So if you're in that dating phase, I explicitly think it is impossible to get to know the person, and thus saying that the point of dating is to get to know someone is, I think, outside of the bounds of what's even possible, let alone what it quote unquote is. Like, not only do I not think it's the definition, I don't think it could even possibly be the definition.
So someone cannot get to know you if you are in stage 1 of dating with dating multiple people. You can get to know them in stage 2 of dating when it's serious, committed, whatever.
Yes.
Okay. You just used dating. Okay. I mean, I think I'd still disagree a bit. Yeah, your feelings would be muddled and stuff, but I think you can still put, people can skip, bleh. Even if your feelings are mixed up, someone can still see you and, get to know you, and you them.
Do you not think that the person who they would be getting to know is sort of like a deep down version of yourself that you're not intentionally putting forward? Like, I think if I went on a first date with someone and they came away with an understanding of me, it would either be the quote unquote best foot forward part, which is not an accurate depiction of me, or it would be something that they subconsciously picked up on, or that I subconsciously gave out, which is not something I intended to give out.
But those are both you.
And those are the only two options.
Those are both you, I would say. Even if your best foot, your best idealized version, whatever, isn't the always active one, that is still an aspect of you and something you presumably want to strive to. And even if this is subconscious of you, that's also still part of you.
I think that it's what you value. It can explain what you value.
What?
Like, whatever your own version of your best foot forward is, it does show what you believe to be your best foot.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something.
Mm.
Yeah, so what are you confused on?
But you just said they couldn't know any you, and then I said what I said, and now you're saying they could know you.
No, they can't actually know you, but they could find out right? So you go on a first date, and you talk about what your job is, or you talk about how many brothers and sisters do you have? What kind of pet do you have? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are sort of very shallow things that you could learn about someone in this kind of thing. I don't think anyone's going to be like, unless you're allergic to something, or like a cat or a dog or something, you're not going to be like, oh man, this person has 2 sisters. That's a red flag. I am no longer going to date them. Right? Mm-hmm. The determination you make after the first date is based on sort of what you, again, subconsciously pick up. Either you're subconsciously picking it up, or they are subconsciously letting you see it.
Mm.
Yeah, that. I think the only thing that could determine whether or not there'd be a second date is something about values, as opposed to a factual description of your life.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're still just in disagreement land. Resident 2. You go on a second date because you enjoyed the company, and you're still learning about the person. The idea that after one date, I'm going to be like, wow, I know this person so much better, and now this one date will determine if I have the second date. I mean, I guess that is kind of how it works. If you,
yeah, I was about to say that's your claim. That's what you're saying. That's what I'm disagreeing with.
I don't know, man. It's early in the morning. I haven't had my something. I don't drink coffee.
Fam, it's 2 p.m.
Listen. They didn't know that. They didn't have to know. Maybe it was all a joke. And maybe now they're picking up that I'm a great jokester.
And tell all the best guffaws, making people laugh.
Yeah.
So, in the one first date that I went on, right, what was the deciding factor about whether or not there was going to be a second date?
Don't
it
ask
was
me this.
To her. Okay. No, for her, it was I was too young, right?
Right.
Okay, so I do not think that she learned anything about my like my personal values or my desires or anything about my personality. For her, it
Sure.
was, oh, he is too young, therefore it's not applicable for a second date.
Mm-hmm.
I do not think that she learned anything about me.
Sure. I would say she could have, but then we're in hypothetical land, Resident 2, of, like, what could this I mean, there is a chance, right? She, like, picked up on enough of you and then used the age thing as an excuse, but that's giving out so many benefits of the doubt.
Yeah. So how many people did you match with?
One. That was
What
it.
is your feelings? What is your why did you? I guess you circled yes on a lot of them, but what are your thoughts on like this person and your experience with them in the zero with date and your plans for a first date? Because I will say that I reached out to my person who I matched with, and I'm
Right.
awaiting a response, and so there is no news about like what that date might end up look like if it happens at all, if I don't get like ghosted or something.
Do you have
So
any
what's
ideas?
no, because they haven't answered yet.
Fair enough. That's probably the healthy way to go about it. The person I matched with, the conversation was fine. We talked about books and exercise and stuff like that. And they were nice. And so we are currently planning. Things can change. Just because it's also very recent developments. But currently planning a Barnes and Noble's date thing.
That's cute.
Wow.
I like that.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I've never done one before, but I kind of like the idea of, like, you go on a date with a person and you try to, like, find book recommendations from each other based off the very little you know. So that could be hilarious or disastrous, or both.
I mean, I think it could be successful or disastrous, and then either way, it could be hilarious.
Sure, that.
Yeah. I will say, because I'm trying to, like, sort of explain myself better in regards to, like, my opinion on this. So, like, my last relationship was with someone who I was friends with for months, almost a year, or maybe, like, 6 months, half a year, before we started dating. And it was during that time period when we were getting to know each other, as you were saying, that there was zero chance of us entering into a relationship because she was already in a relationship. And so I got to know her without the as I said, like the dance of dating someone, the dance of having like romantic interest in each other and then determining like what the other person's like. It was just like a normal friendship that once she became single, then started that romantic dance. But like I already knew the person. I already knew her.
Right.
And so I just think that there's a necessary element of deception in entering into a conversation with somebody with the intention of like romantic dating.
And that deception element is the best foot forward thing?
Yes, and it makes it impossible to get to know the person while you're in that stage. I'm going to keep calling it a dance as opposed to like a deception. It's kind of like like what do you do? And then, let's say, one of the things that me and you currently do, right? We play board games. Would you agree that we play board games?
We do play board games.
Would you say that we are board game people?
Kind of. Yeah.
I would say like not really. Like the last time we played a board game, we played a couple like this month. We played some on my birthday, and then we played some like the next week because we like wanted to play Lorcana, but then we couldn't because my brother wasn't there, and so there's only 3 of us, and so we played board games instead. But there are some people who get together on Friday nights and they play board games, and it could be Risk. It could be one of the like extremely complicated board games. It could be Scrabble. In my opinion, if someone said that they're a board game person, and I ask what that means, and they say like Cards Against Humanities, in my mind, I'd be like, okay, so you're not like really a board game person, right? When I think board game person, I think you're playing a deep strategy games regularly on Friday with your friends. So while me and you play board games, I would not say that we're board game people. Now,
if I was for yourself, thank you very much.
If I was on a first date with someone and they said, I am a board game person. Every Friday, me and my friends get together and we play board games. I might say, oh, I am also a board game person. And the reason I would say that is because I do enjoy playing board games, and I would be willing to learn these more complicated games that they play, and I would actually probably enjoy myself in a social setting where every Friday we play board games. But as of right now, that is not something that I actually do. It's something I might want to do, it's something I might find interest in, but I would sort of be stretching the truth to say that I am also a board game person.
Well, no, you're stretching the truth by your own definition, but that doesn't mean it's not the case. Like, if you say, this person says, oh, I play board games every Friday night, whatever, and you go, oh, I also play board games and am a board game person. And then they go, how so? And you explain, oh, once a month we play board games or whatever. And they go, nice, cool, that you are a board game person. Then you are a board game person. As far as they're concerned.
I just feel like it would be unlikely for them to ask that question.
You think it's unlikely I also play board games. What board games? How often?
Yeah, because at least as somebody as a man who has existed on the internet for the last 10 plus years, I feel like that kind of question is almost like gatekeeping. And so I wouldn't expect someone else to ask it.
I guess so, but if like my date was like, we talked about reading, and she was like, oh, what do you like to read? And so then I answered. It wasn't like and so in the same way, like, I would, like, oh, I play board games. Oh, what board games do you like to play? Like, I don't think that, I see how it could be gatekeepy, but that's also just taking an interest.
So like one of the women on the speed date, like, her hobbies seem to be reading, loves reading, reads on her phone every day. At work, she's on her phone reading. She has like a Kindle, but like doesn't use it because she ends up reading so much that like to pull it out is almost like a barrier in the way of reading. So she just reads on her phone. Reads, love books. Now, I read books. There are some people we know who probably haven't read a book since high school, and there's some people we know who didn't even read books in high school. They just don't read. I do read. I do like books. I love books. But when I was having this conversation with her, because I am nowhere near that kind of reader, I will listen to audiobooks. I will read a book if the movie is coming out. I have made it my job, obviously, to read all the Five Nights at Freddy's books for my channel, which is kind of taking up a lot of time that I would otherwise spend reading other books. But my answer was, oh yes, I do love reading. But I also felt like if I told her, I love reading, by which I mean I'll read a book if the movie's coming out and I listen to audiobooks instead of actually reading, she might be like, oh, then you're not a real reader. But I don't think that she would say that, because I think most people would know that saying that is gatekeeping. So she might then go, oh, he's like not really a real reader, he's just saying that. But not say that, she would just think that. And so what's best for both of us, and I think that inherently people know this, again, this is the dance of dating, is for her to not ask, for her to not elaborate, for her to not ask me to elaborate. We both say that we read. And let's say that we then like start actually dating. And so I'm going to want to like impress this person. Or we're just going to spend more time together until our hobbies kind of mix and match. That will probably end up with me reading more books. Just because it's not something currently in my life does not mean it's not something I could make room for, because it is something I'm interested in. Again, like Friday night board game nights. And so by her not asking that question, not gatekeeping, not hearing something that she doesn't necessarily want to hear, and then writing it off, it allows us room to grow together. I think that if you're in a relationship, you need to grow together, right? That's healthy, as opposed to like the opposite of that, which would be like growing apart in a relationship, right?
I thought the opposite would destroy each other, but go on.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the dance, right? You allow the person who has room. Obviously, if the other person says, I don't read and I never will read, or if they say, I do love reading, and then you get together and then they never read because they were lying, right? That's a bad thing. But I think you leave the other person the opportunity to have you guys grow closer together once the relationship starts. And I think if I'm talking to two girls at once, right, on two different like first dates, and one of them loves reading, and so I say, oh, I like reading too, and the other person says, I hate reading, and I say, oh, well, I don't read that much, right? You're kind of presenting different versions of yourself to the different people based on their answers, because you happen to be open to, changing yourself, to growing with each person simultaneously, which I think is impossible.
Okay, so this explains a bit more, and I couldn't disagree more with that approach. Obviously, people do it. I do it sometimes. But, like, if I was having this conversation with this girl, right, who was a big reader, and she was like, are you a reader? I would just go, yes. And, like, sure, you could... and the gatekeeping and the growing to read together and whatever, but you could also just communicate effectively in the beginning and go from there. If, like...
I don't think that women want that. I don't think that most men want that either.
Communicating in the beginning?
No, I think you want to dance.
No, I'm so tired of the dance. I was talking about how, to one of my friends, I was like, the gay dating space seems to have so much less rules, and it seems so freeing. I have no idea if that's the case. I have not gone into the gay spaces to date or anything. But I'm tired of the dance and the rules. I just want to be up front and know if we're going to get to well together and go from there. There doesn't need to be this dance. I'm going to tell you who I am up front, and if you told me who you are up front, we can then amicably go, this was nice. I see that we're not going to go anywhere, and, I appreciate the time and effort we both put into this, and, maybe we'll be friends. Probably not, but, like, adios. Instead of going, well, I am a reader, but I could be more of a reader. Well, I am a reader, but I could read less. And also, audiobook reading is reading. That's fine.
I agree. Some people don't.
Sure.
I would also, some people, okay, you said you're a reader, right? But I think that most of the things you read are manga, right?
I've been branching into books and American comics.
I think that if you said I like reading, they would assume
and
that
audiobooks.
They would assume that you mean, like, real books.
Whoa, well, now who's being gatekeeping?
You're just kind of allowing them to believe that when you say that you read a lot, that those are books as opposed to manga. No, I'm sorry, but there are women who would say, oh, you read a lot of manga, I'm not interested. There's other women who would say, oh, you read a lot of manga, now I'm more interested. But the point is that you're leaving it vague enough. I think a lot of people like the dance, and I think that especially women like the dance. And again, because I think if I was talking to someone and they were being straightforward the way that you are saying that, like, you wish it was, that would immediately lead to a lot of people writing a lot of other people off. If a girl is looking for a book reader, and she says, I am looking for a book reader, and then I say the exact truth of me saying, I only read books when the movie's coming out and I listen to audiobooks. And she's like, well, that's not what I'm looking for. Bye.
Sure.
As opposed, which seems to be the attitude that you're putting forward that you wish that you knew. Me saying I read a lot and not explaining, and then as me and her decide to be exclusive and then start dating more, I actually increase what I'm reading to be more as what she wants. We've now formed a healthy relationship. We've now grown together.
But that's not... yes and no. Because, if her opinion was so strong that if she had known the truth, she would have not chosen you, you could say that's a lie. Secondly, if you... that's growing together, I guess, but that's also just allowing yourself room to adapt to this person. I wouldn't say that's true growth. It's more of two people, doing this thing and, becoming better people. You're one person adapting to another. And I was talking with one of the dates, actually, of, one of the things overrated is checklists that people have for dating. It can be a useful tool, but once you start putting too much pressure and stuff and value and, you lose the tree for the forest kind of thing, and you're like, well, you don't read enough? I'm not gonna date you. Then, then what are you doing?
Well, I would say that you kind of said one person adapting to the other. No, I think that you're both adapting to each other, which is the only way to make a long-term relationship work. You got to be partners in life, and I think that over time you will necessarily grow together, and I think that what the secret to a successful relationship would be is intentionally forming those connections and that growing together. There's an example I want to bring up from a television show. And that television show is the show Scrubs, where they were basically having the same conversation. And the main character, JD, is talking to Carla, who married his best friend. And it's like, hey, when you two were first dating, did you tell my best friend that you loved basketball. And she said, yes, I did say that. And he said, and how many basketball games have you watched since you two moved in together? And she said 0, because she wasn't actually into basketball. That was just a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is bad. That is like, oh, I am going to say this thing because I want the person to like me, as opposed to, I am genuinely interested in this thing. It just so happens to not be a big part of my personality right now, but I would allow it to be, would we get together, right? Because I think there's only so many things that you can legitimately be interested in at once. I do love me some Legend of Zelda, right? My favorite game franchise.
Sure.
There's a lot of other games I like. I like Pokemon. I love Pokemon. I love Mario. I love Call of Duty, actually. I think if I started dating a girl who was into Pokemon as much as I'm into Zelda, I think I'd probably end up playing more Pokemon, and I would hope that she would end up playing more Zelda.
Sure.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, but that's...
Whereas if I had a checklist and I'm like, I will only date a girl who loves Zelda as much as I do, I think that would be bad.
Sure, yeah. I would say that would get in the way.
And then if I dated a girl who said, I will never play Zelda, I hate it, I also think that just wouldn't work out.
And, yeah... If that's the only red flag, quote unquote, I would disagree. Because surely you could be humans and, like, get past the one Zelda thing. If that was the only thing.
I think we've had a conversation about this in the past, where I think that the way that you express your appreciation, because I think that art is more real than reality. And so I think that the way that you express your appreciation and your connection to art is something that's more important. If someone says, I hate Star Wars and Zelda and Taylor Swift, yeah, that's just music and movies. Like, that's not super important, as opposed to, like, more real connections. But I don't think I would have more real connections with somebody who dislikes those things, because of what the values of liking those things mean to you as a person, right? It's not like I'm like, I want to see Star Wars, the new Star Wars movie, and you don't want to, so now we can't make that a date, frowny face. It would be more like, I value Star Wars because it's such a great story about, like, the existence of living and the different types of love and things like that. And if you dislike stories about the different kind of loves, then we might have different definitions of love, and therefore that's a fundamental thing that we disagree with within our relationship.
But that's putting a lot of weight on Star Wars. They could also just as easily go, yeah, I don't like Star Wars, but I love the Batman comics, especially when they focus on the Batman, or the Bat family, and, like, blah, blah, blah. And all these other things. She could have the same values and just not like your things. Is my point.
Yes, but I think that the things... I mean, you could just hate, like, the aesthetic of, like, old movies, and so you don't like the original trilogy. Or you just hate, like, space-related media, and so you don't like Star Wars, whatever. But I think that the, whatever that they would like in that stead would be equivalent enough for there to be a lot of crossover between the two things. So, like, I like superheroes, right? I like the Marvel movies. I think if I dated a girl who liked The Boys, I would say, oh, yeah, those are both technically superhero things, but they're literally the exact opposite. And I despise The Boys as a TV show. It has the exact opposite, like, the values and lessons and morals and, like, the things that I agree with. And so for you to like it, beyond it just being a normal TV show, right? When I say love, when I say like, I mean, like, being in the fandom. For you to like it, like, yes, okay, we like superheroes and we like television and, like, we are attached to the media that we prefer. But if you like it, I don't think we're going to get along in other aspects.
But then you could go on dates and then learn these things and then grow as people, and then you could do maybe you still never like The Boys, but, like, whatever adjacent properties that she would like related to The Boys, I guess. And then you could like those things, and then those things, and blah, 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 blah.
But those adjacent properties would also be things I didn't like.
Well, you're just assuming that, though. You can't know these things until they happen.
But the example I just specifically used was, I would not say that, like, the Marvel movies are an adjacent property to The Boys just because they're superhero movies. I would think that an adjacent property would be something that has, like, the same perspective on life that The Boys does, and thus I would also not like that. Again, I think that art is more in tune with your true self than anything you would ever... I've said before, I think that creating art is a better way of communicating than anything else, including, like, direct use of language. Unless I think that the art that somebody likes, and again, this is different than, like, oh, I like this song. It's more like I am taking this in as a vital part of myself. that learning that about somebody is a better insight into who they are as a person than anything that they could communicate verbally. And thus, if someone said, I love this thing, and that thing is something that does not get along with your values. And when I say values, I'm not talking about like religion or politics or something. I mean like the conceit of the piece of art and the reason it was created, right? I think if someone said that like, I like this, but then their personality or the way they talk or the things that they say don't align with that, I would think that the art that they're consuming is actually a better reflection of their soul than the things that they say.
But you
But
wouldn't
then,
know that
but
unless spend time with them.
I would say that there is a possibility of me as someone. Let's say I'm not a fan of something, and I have a bad I have a negative opinion on that. I would obviously leave room to say that I don't understand the thing to the effect where I would understand like what it is that they like about it. Right, that is something that you could communicate with someone. Right, like I think anyone who's listening to the show knows that I love Taylor Swift. Right. Taylor Swift it covers a lot of musical genres and a lot of topics. And there are some of those musical genres and topics that I actually don't like and don't vibe with and disagree with, and I don't listen to them. I hate the Reputation album. I know people who that's their favorite album of hers. I hate it. I despise it. I don't listen to it except for New Year's Day. New Year's Day is goated. So when I say I like Taylor Swift, I'm talking about like her other albums. And if I say I like Taylor Swift and someone hates Taylor Swift because they hate Reputation, they might get the wrong idea about what it is that I like about her. And so it's that you could learn through further verbal conversations with somebody. And thus that would be the value of those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, like, if someone came up to me and we were talking and they were like, I hate Kingdom Hearts and everything it stands for,
Yes.
but love Final Fantasy, then I would, based off of what you're saying, I would be like, well, that's just a contradicting thingy. Like, they're very similar. I would say even in values. At least for some of them. Depends on the Final Fantasy, I guess.
Yeah. Obviously, the things that are valuable within Kingdom Hearts would be things like the exploration of, like, or more like the contrasting of different interpretations of, like, the Disney movies, right? Like, what does it mean to have a world that's based on Alice in Wonderland right next to a world that's based on Tarzan? What is that saying? And then obviously the overt message of the franchise is like friendship wins overall. And I do personally think that the way that Kingdom Hearts expresses that is the best piece of media that expresses the idea that friendship is valued overall. I think there's a lot of like schlocky kids movies that try to express that, and Kingdom Hearts expresses it better than any of them. But I also say that there's something in Kingdom Hearts about like you value it for the mysterious way that it tells its story and the different characters and the way that you don't fully understand somebody in the beginning, like the character of Axel. And then as you learn more about them, you realize that despite the fact that they are literally a villain the first time you meet them, they've actually not only had a character arc where they change, but they are actually complex the entire time and you never understood them. And so that could teach you a value about, like, not necessarily judging people, but like the idea that people are sometimes taken in by like a dark promise of change, and them following that for whatever reason they have is very different than who they are deep down as a person, right? So if you say that your favorite character is Axel, and I think a lot of people's favorite character is Axel, or Lee, we can call him Lee too, because I think that's another aspect of his character that's important to him. I think if you say that you value Axel, that tells you something about what the person actually likes and values in a story, because it's what they relate to in the telling of said story. I think that Axel's story arc is very different than like Vegeta's story arc in Dragon Ball Z, despite the fact that in both cases it's a villain who's like turning to the good side, because I think that who they are characters is very different. So I think if someone said that their favorite character is Axel, I'd be like, yo, me too. But it has nothing to do with the fact that he has like red hair and a funny catchphrase.
Yeah.
And so I think if the person said, I don't like Kingdom Hearts because I don't like Disney movies, you could be like, okay, well, that's a very surface level reading of Kingdom Hearts. Whereas if they said, I don't like Kingdom Hearts because I played the games and I really despise the character of Axel, he's annoying, you could be like, oh, well, I don't know if I'm going to get along with you then.
Yeah, back in disagreement. Resident 2. I just don't agree.
What does Resident 2 mean? This is the second
there are two residents there, you and I.
Okay. Residents of the Hobo Land, yeah.
Yeah, now we're in disagreement land. It's just a little barren desert type thing. with a fissure dramatically imposed into the ground, and we're on either side of it, reaching out for each other, but never quite reaching. No, I mean, yeah, people are different, I guess. I just wouldn't put as much stock or weight into that reading. Unless they explicitly said that. If someone was like, oh, I hate Axel, I wouldn't go, oh, so you hate that people are complex and that there can be all these promises and all these things that you just said. I would be like, you don't like Axel. Who do you like? And then they'd say, and I'd be like, and then we'd have a discussion about it, and then I'd learn their thoughts more on it, I guess.
Well, I would say that the options, if they say they don't like Axel, the options are that they are incorrect about what Axel is, or that you won't get along, and that there's no third option.
That's wild. That's wild.
Why? I think that's fundamental.
I mean, sure, you like, can understand a character or don't, and then you can either, like, not enjoy that from the person, but I don't know, I just wouldn't put that much into it. If someone was like, I hate Axel, and I understand their character, and I don't like him anyway, I wouldn't think, wow, this relationship would never work. That I can't believe they don't like Axel and everything he represents as a character and so forth and so on. I'd be like, I don't know. I just don't put as much stock into it.
I think if you're using phrases like putting stock into it, you're not fully understanding what I'm saying, because I think that's... Or maybe you just disagree on the nature of what a relationship is, but I think that kind of connection with someone is the foundation of a relationship.
I think I just don't put as much... Like you were saying, like, the art is the most important thing, and so forth and so on. And I do agree that, like, especially when you're younger, right, and it's, like, helping determine core parts of who you are, or it can at least, right? Some people have religion for that, or whatever. Some people have video games, or whatever, or your parents, or, you know, however you're raised, and what values you end up processing. Art can be that thing for you, but also to then be like, well, I presumably, right? Like, oh, if I got all these values and lessons from art, then everyone must get them from values, from, like, art and stuff. Therefore, it's the most important thing in the world, and, like, how you respond and perceive and so forth. I just wouldn't. I don't, like, as much as it can be good and form your core things, I could now, even understanding, which I think I do, of everything that you've said, I just don't see that as a scenario for myself, at least, where I'm just like, you hate Kingdom Hearts, and therefore I will not engage with this anymore. Unless they were specifically like, I hate Kingdom Hearts and the message that it is trying to send of friendship and so forth and so on. I guess that would be kind of wild. I just wouldn't assume that. I don't know. I think, especially with video games, people don't put as, like, just don't approach it in the same way. Like, when people are like, oh, I hate Kingdom Hearts and whatever, I don't think they're even looking at the message that is trying to send and so forth and so on. And they're just like, I hate thing. And it's that deep. So then for me to be like, oh, well, you hate thing, therefore no.
I think... So... Okay, so I think that I would not necessarily have to be in a relationship with somebody who's the same religion as me, right? They don't have to be Catholic. They don't even have to be Christian. They don't even necessarily have to have a religion or even know what their religion is, right? But I do think that you can divide people into two types of people.
Okay.
Type 1 of people would be people who believe in a higher power. Now, you can be an atheist and believe in a higher power, and that higher power could be like humanity. That higher power could be like our responsibility to the Earth because it is the only planet that we know of that can sustain life. right? Like, those are higher powers.
Sure.
And then there's some people who don't believe that. And I've heard this before, and they say, like, the highest power is the self. Or they'll say something like, I create my own morals. And I'm not saying that those people are wrong and I'm right. Obviously, I believe that, but I'm not going to be like, those people are wrong, which is why I wouldn't date them. I'm saying that two people that group A and group B, the person who believes that there's a higher power and the person who believes that the self creates the morals and there's no higher power than the individual, I think fundamentally could not possibly get along or have a healthy relationship. Especially if part of that relationship would be like having children and like raising them together.
Sure.
So do you accept that like the A and the B people just could not get along?
Not exactly. I guess it depends on how much of a healthily, sure. I think it depends on how big of a thing that is for each person, because you could believe those things and have those as your person, but they could still be low enough that you're like, it never becomes too much of an issue if you throw kids into the mix and then how you raise them, and then like, yeah, I could see that getting really weird.
I guess I would say that the value that I would place on the difference between an A person and a B person, the question of is there a higher power, is the same value I would place on an A person and a B person on their opinion of the character of Axel from Kingdom Hearts.
Sure.
Because I think that those things are equally equivalent in the ability of two people to have a healthy relationship. And that's not saying someone's opinion on Kingdom Hearts is the same as their religion. It's saying I have A value and you have B value, and those are not compatible.
Right.
And one aspect of the values I have is, the idea that like, you have a duty to something besides yourself. And the other value is I believe in the idea of like, getting to know someone first before judging them, and the idea that people can change, and the idea that someone's actions speak louder than their words, and the idea that people can be tricked, but that doesn't mean that they're a bad person, right? Like, I think that those are all equivalent in the things that I believe. And if you disagree with any of those, then I would say that is something that's incompatible.
It's fair. It's fair.
Does that help understand the difference between me just saying that if someone doesn't like Axel, I wouldn't date them? On the surface, that is obviously an insane thing to say, which is why I'm trying to express exactly what I mean. I have a feeling that in some of the conversations that we will have in the future in April, I may have not like expressed myself properly to like the reason I'm saying the things I'm saying is because I believe something, but I also think that the reason I believe something is important. And so if you kind of just stop on the basic analysis of just saying something, people can actually get the wrong idea of what it is you believe and why you believe it. So I'm just trying to be very direct and articulate about the things that I'm trying to say.
Yes. No, I picked up what you were putting down with Axel initially. The A and B thing did help further clarify it. We got from like a 90% to 100%. I think I still just disagree though. Or that like, I don't know, maybe I'm putting too much faith, if faith is the word that I want. I kind of want to say stock again, but I'm trying to stop saying how many times I say that word because I feel like a drinking game is going to be invented from this. I don't know. I guess it just depends on how big things are in relation to your characters, and like, what compromises you're willing to make and so forth and so on, and like, is where and when in relationships do you agree on some things and disagree on others, and when that becomes a big enough split or rupture that you're like, this can or can't be mended. I think that's part of the thing for me, is in my head, you date and you learn these things and you're like, okay, there are little like potholes or whatever coming up in this road that we're trying to walk together. Can this be patched up, or is this going to turn into a sinkhole and we gotta go our separate ways? And then you just ask that each time a thing comes up. Like, I believe in a higher power, for example, but I think I could date someone that didn't. Maybe I haven't... Yeah, I don't see it.
So I think that there's the question of like what somebody's looking for in a relationship. Because when I'm thinking of
This
like
is true.
the things I value, like right. So what's the definition of a relationship? I know people who are like, I want like just someone who I can tell about my day, and I don't value them as a person.
You're
And I'm like,
valuing the service they provide.
yes, and I'm like, okay,
Yes.
I guess that you two could be exact opposite people as long as you're both home at the end of the day and one of you cooks dinner and the other one puts the dishes away and you have someone to
Mm-hmm.
talk to.
Right.
Um like okay, I just don't think that that's like a a meaningful relationship. And the other person could be like, well, I'm incapable of forming close bonds with people just because of my personality or because of like things I've been through, etc. And so, if I have a friend and like a companion, then that is really all I want. And if I can find someone else who really only wants a companion, then, we found each other and that's a positive thing for both of us. And I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And this is just kind of like a quirk of language, because I would
Yes.
simply say that those things are not the same, that those relationships are not both the same type of thing, even if we have to use the word relationship to refer to both of them. It also
Mm-hmm.
does not mean one is better than the other. I just think that they're different categories of things that our language restricts us to calling them the same thing.
Yeah.
And so when
No.
I say relationship, I am talking about the first category of thing, the thing that is like love.
Loving that junk.
Well, I think if you don't value the other person as a person, then it's not like love. So I'm talking about relationships.
Sure, sure. That is a good point and interesting to bring up, because I have found like the certain conversations I have with people, it's just like, why are we disagreeing for half an hour? Oh, we just don't agree on what this word means, or one of us was confused what it meant. Oh. Um, but I don't have the same take on relationship as that guy, this hypothetical guy.
Hypothetical person. This is genuinely not a real person. It's just
Yes,
things
yes.
I've heard expressed before. I'm not like calling anyone out.
No, the thing I would want from a relationship, I think, is the more or less like typical thing. You'd like someone to like join you on your journey of life, and you like grow together and what have you, and you're there for each other emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, if you want to go there. And you help each other and so forth and so on. To me, right, like at the end of the day, the like my partner, spouse, wife, whatever you want to call them, like to me, that's just a best friend that you have sex with.
Yes, and I've heard you express this before. We had a conversation in high school, so this is obviously like over 10 years ago, where I asked you the definition of love. Do you remember what you said?
No.
You said it's when you like someone like a whole lot, like to a level that is above the way that you would like other people. And I just said that is wrong.
Sounds right.
I
Sounds about
also think
right.
that they are different categories of thing. I think that a friendship is a different category of thing than a spouse. And you can be friends with your spouse or you can not be friends with your spouse. And there are different categories of thing. And again, I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other. I would
Mm-hmm.
like to be friends with my spouse, but I do not think that those are necessarily it doesn't go friendship and then wife. Those are just two different things.
So I think part of the process with dating is becoming friends.
I
And
don't think
there,
it's possible to become friends with somebody who you start by dating. Now, okay, let me rephrase that. Obviously, you can. I said that wrong. Ignore that I said that. I don't think that during the process of the early phase of dating, where you're still in that first the best foot forward mode, it is
sure.
possible to become true friends because you are putting forward a idealized version of yourself. Steps beyond that, absolutely you can.
Yeah, sure. Uh, I guess I agree. I think you still could be in the very first phases, but yes, it's way more likely after that, of like when you're serious and you break up for whatever reason, or you keep going forward and stuff. Sure, I use a stage 2 or something.
I will also say,
Stage 2 of dating.
as we're now over an hour and a half of talking about various relationshipy things,
Yeah.
the nature of this podcast and the nature of also any YouTube video I've ever put out, I inherently think that people change their opinions on things as they get older and have access to new experiences and new information and meet new people and things like that.
Yeah.
And because I would say that I have almost the exact opposite opinions that I did when I was like 18 on like a variety of very important topics. I think that in April we might have a conversation about something like the trolley problem, in which I expressed that my opinion on it today is so opposite of what it was 3 years ago that if I was in a room with me from 3 years ago, we might have a serious argument about it. And so when I say these things on this podcast, even though I'm speaking very confidently and I'm saying this is that, I think this, because I believe that people change over time, I am saying this as myself, knowing that there's a high possibility I will have the complete opposite opinion in a year. Whereas I also know that there's many people out there who have never changed their opinion on anything, or see people changing their opinion as like, oh, well, that person's stupid, or oh, that person's flip-flopping. And so I have a feeling that there will be people out there who disagree with me who are like almost judging me for my opinion, when merely or my perspective, I should say, not opinion, because I'm saying it with such authority that they might believe I don't have. And my response to that would kind of be like, if you think that I'm speaking with an authority I don't have a right to have, then it is people with your perspective who could change my mind, because I'm very open-minded. And so I don't want people to think I'm arrogant because I'm stating these things with confidence. It is simply explaining what I believe, and I'm explaining what I believe because this is our podcast, and that's why the podcast exists.
That was a great disclaimer.
Yeah, that should have been in episode 1. We should have opened with that instead of what's
the name? Is it Slappy Wappy? Oh no.
Slappy Wappy, I ran over a bucket on the highway. Our first episode was so good.
I'm glad you think so.
The content was good. We could work out our audio and
hey, we can still work out our audio and repertoire. We're ever evolving, baby.
Yes. I did not expect us to go over an hour, and I didn't expect us to only talk about one thing, but here we are.
You know what I hate as a pet name?
Okay, I would love to hear this because I have strong opinions too. What do you hate as a pet name?
Baby.
Yes. Did we talk about this?
Oh, yes, Devon, let's talk!
Did we previously have this conversation? I was thinking about this yesterday.
I don't know if we've had this conversation before, and I don't care. We're having it again if need be.
Yes, no, I so agree. Because I listened to another podcast, I think I've talked about this, where the one of the hosts calls his wife baby, and I've always hated that.
It's
cutie,
gross.
sweetie, that's fine. I can even handle honey, but baby, zero. Babe, almost as bad.
Well, okay, hear me out. So I only have this intense of feelings for baby. Baby is awful. Terrible.
Yes.
Don't like it. Babe? It's better. I might be in a similar boat with you. We should make like a tier list or something. Like, it's way better than baby, but I'm like, it's like if it's like for calling people baby, but you're trying to get off of calling them that, you know? You're trying to, like, chew gum instead of smoking cigarettes or something. Like, you're like, I've been calling this person baby and they don't like it, so I'm gonna call them babe. That is the logic for my brain.
Yes. Okay, so, yesterday, this is kind of like another disclaimer. This is why I was thinking about it yesterday. Okay, so one of the things that people will also refer to their significant other as is partner. So my stepmother, when she was dating my father, but before they got married, basically said, like, I hate calling your dad my boyfriend and me his girlfriend because we are in our 50s, and it just seems like it's kind of, like, infantile, but I also don't think there's a better word for it. And so, like, partner just seems, like, better.
Sure.
My brother also calls his girlfriend his partner, and he thinks it's better. Now, there are many, many reasons to legitimately call your significant other partner. I think sometimes there are people who are like, oh, I'm in like I'm in a gay relationship, or I'm dating like a trans person or a non-binary person. It's just easier to say partner than to explain. And then there's other people who are like, well, I'm in a heterosexual cisgender relationship and I call my significant other partner because if everyone did that, then it wouldn't make the trans and homosexual people stand out, right? It's the same reason why it used to be that, like, okay, you're trans, so you're putting your pronouns in your bio. And then cis people were like, okay, well, I'm going to put my pronouns in my bio so that it's not just a thing that trans people do and it becomes normalized, right? So there's legitimate reasons to call your significant other partner. And there are people that I speak to who use that language, and I have no problem with them doing it. I just think that my brother doing it and my now stepmother doing it were silly. And I knew that this is something I wanted to talk about. And I also knew that if I was going to talk about this, I needed to be like, guys, it's not super serious. I see my brother calling his girlfriend partner the same way that I would see people calling each other baby in a relationship, in that I simply do not like it. It is not making like a moral stance on doing it. It is just something I would not do or want to do.
You're so welcome.
So I'm glad that you brought it up, because I did mean to talk about this.
I think partner is great, because it's your partner in crime. You can be like, howdy partner. You can go on so many things. I guess it could be a little weird from your perspective, right? That like your mom and your brother are calling these people partner, but I do think it is a good descriptor, like, not to get too personal, but like once you start dating someone for like, I don't know, more than 3 years and you're not married and you're not engaged, just call them partner. That's fine. It's clearly more than boyfriend or girlfriend.
Well, I think my disagreement with it linguistically is like, I would rather expand the definition and the usage of boyfriend and girlfriend rather than just create a second term.
How would you expand it?
By using it in that manner. Like, again, my stepmother in her 50s or 40s, I guess, at the time, saying, I don't like being called a girlfriend because it's like, it has the word girl. I'm like, well, I would rather the word girlfriend stop meaning... I would rather the word girlfriend not be infantilizing to anybody until you do use it, as opposed to you stop using it because people view it as infantilizing. I would rather expand the definition of the word to no longer be its literal meaning, as opposed to creating a second word to fulfill that function that we don't currently have.
Do you think people ever out loud... Because I think there is a version of this, right?
Yep.
That's mostly online, when it's like, oh, this is my GF, or my goof, or boof.
Yeah.
So we just need to vocalize that, and the people in your life can say, oh, this is my boof, and this is my goof.
This is my goof.
No, I mean... Yeah,
that was a bit, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could see how it's infantilizing, but I do think, and like, I get your point.
You know what else is infantilizing? But like, actually... Baby.
Yeah, it is.
But like, some people don't see it that way, and like, that's fine. And I'm not gonna be like, you're calling your wife a baby? That's like weird, because obviously it's not weird. It's just something I would not do.
Yeah. I don't know.
Sweetie, cutie, honey, even, I don't think I'd use that, but like, I'm not opposed to using it. But like, those are pet names that I can get behind.
Here, I think the only one I would use is honey. Or like hun. Or darling.
Yeah.
Darling. In that classy mood, you know? But like, I don't know, sweetie? I don't know. It's just got something about it. What was the other one you said?
I said sweetie, cutie, and honey.
Oh, but, cutie? Nah. What are we doing? What am I, an orange?
Yes.
Get out of here.
I could totally see just calling my wife cutie, like, forever. 100%.
I mean, maybe if the orange became an inside joke between us, and that's what I would call her cutie, ironically. The orange. I don't think I could call a partner cutie. I'd be like, I don't know. Pet names are
but
kind of weird.
Would you
anyway.
judge me if I did? I disagree.
Oh, no.
Pet names are important. I would only ever call my partner by pet name.
No,
To their face.
Well, you know what it is? It's how you grow up, because my parents never called each other by pet names.
Neither did my parents. They're also divorced.
Well,
I think my dad might. I think my dad used honey, but like that's it.
Nah, I don't know. So you're all for pet names, huh?
Super for pet names. I had nicknames for both of my exes that were not their literal name.
Sure. I mean, I guess that's a little... If you come up with something, right, that's like, oh, you're my little T-Rex.
No, it was like it was variations on their names.
Sure. Sure, but yeah, even that, when it... Yeah, okay, I can see that.
So, like, okay, so I call... My dog's name is Amber, right?
Yes.
I will call her Bamber.
Mm-hmm.
I will call her Bambus.
Mm.
I will call her Squidgy. I will call her Squishy. I will call her Snoozle. I will call her lots of things. But Bamber is a derivation of her actual name. Mm-hmm. And so me calling her Bamber, knowing that her real name is Amber, is a derivation of her name versus calling her, oh my gosh, little Squidgy Face, right? Squidgy Face is a very different thing than Bamber. And so with both my ex-girlfriends, I had a Bamber version of their name, as well as then in more like in private, calling them Squidgy Face, right? But in public, I might use Bamber.
Sure. It's wild, interesting. The closest I've ever gotten with those is my animals. Like, I have a cat named Shadow. So, when I was lazy a few times, I would just say Shatter.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's partially known as Shatter.
Now, are you saying that, like, SHATTER, like the word shatter, or are you saying it like in like a southern accent, like shadow?
It can be with a TTER or it can be a DDER.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either DDER. DDER seems more normal to me.
But no, I don't know. I'm just not huge on pet names, I think. Unless you're like making fun of them. That's hilarious.
Teasing? Do you think teasing is an important part of a relationship? Because I do.
Yeah. I mean, obviously set your limits and, like if someone tries to tickle me, they're gonna get kicked in the face.
Oh,
That's
Lordy.
just gonna happen. But like, yeah.
I think it's funny that that what you just said is the only thing I call pet names are my pets. And I'm like, well,
yeah.
That's why they're called pet names, but like at the same time,
hey.
I don't know.
I did it. You don't know?
I don't know. Would you mind being called a pet name? What if calling pet names and teasing was like your significant other's like love language, right? What if they gave you one? Would you say no, I don't like that?
It depends on what it is. If they called me baby, I'd be like,
yeah. Okay.
Please choose another word. I do not like it.
Okay. You said that baby was the only thing on your like hatred list?
Yeah, that's the only like hatred. Like if they called me babe, I could be like, yeah, okay.
What about daddy?
Devon!
Did you just literally scream? I think Discord may have cut that out. You just literally screamed.
I did.
And I don't mean in like a super sexual way, just like in conversation.
I was living in bliss. I didn't know.
You didn't even think of that as an option. That's at the triple hating list. If baby is F tier, that's like Z tier. Like, or it doesn't even belong on the tier list. Is that
okay?
Your opinion here?
No. Okay. Hear me out.
Okay, I'm hearing you out.
It depends on the context, right? I will
Okay.
always hate... No. Listen, then draw your conclusions.
Okay.
I will always hate being called baby, no matter the context. But if they're calling me daddy as a bit, I can be like, ha, we're having a laugh, that's fine.
Teasing.
Yes.
Okay.
Because then it could also extend into zaddy, which I don't understand, but so that's fine.
Okay. Obviously, this conversation is excluding like you don't want to have kids, but I do. Obviously, if my wife starts calling me daddy, like in conversationally, because our young child is there, that is the purpose of using that word and completely appropriate. That is what it's in fact meant to mean. How it's meant to be used.
Mama, where is daddy? Daddy's over there, sweetheart.
Exactly. That is the only time I think it would be usable.
So, what about you? Is Daddy like triple F tier for you?
Yeah, no, it's F tier.
Okay, okay.
Along with baby.
You wouldn't even take it as teasing.
No, I think teasing would be fine.
Okay.
I think
So
there's
we have the same
very
opinion.
few things that wouldn't be acceptable in teasing.
Okay. Whew.
What do you think about in a teasing sense, dummy?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I think that there's a lot of people who would be very against that. I think that would be in other people's F tiers.
I'm saying it's been a minute since anyone called me a dummy. And it would depend a bit, but like, I don't know, my immediate reaction is not the same as those two, so I think it would be fine.
Do you think there's a functional difference between silly and dummy?
Oh, 100%. Silly is
See,
like cute and playful. It's the difference between sleepy and tired.
Okay, I see. I think that they're equal.
Interesting.
But if my partner told me that they didn't like one, but were okay with the other, I would simply stop using it.
If they didn't like one but did like the other, you would stop
Yeah,
with both?
if they're like, you can call me silly, but don't call me dummy, I'd be like, okay, because we would grow together.
What if they grew to like dummy? How would you know?
Well, they could say it. Also, so like I just said partner, right? And the reason I said partner is because to me that can refer to a wide range of different relationships. That could be girlfriend, that could be wife, which is why I think it's sort of less useful when you're talking about a real person who you are presently within a defined relationship with. Whereas if you're talking like hypothetically or about someone across different versions of a relationship, then it is useful.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
Shrug.
Yeah, I met up with one of my high school teachers earlier in the week, and we caught up because she's leaving, and so this was like my freshman year English teacher, and then future senior year creative writing teacher, and I told her about the podcast, and so it's very possible that this is the first episode she's going to listen to.
Wow.
And so that's just kind of been in the back of my head this whole time. So that's
2
cool.
hours in. And she's just going to be like, what? Did I go wrong teaching?
He's talking about words. Why is he... I know he likes words and like, stuff like that, but this is just nonsense. There's a possibility that is the case, which I think is funny. Yeah, I think words are important. Do you think words are important?
Yeah. They help us communicate, get on an even playing field in terms of understanding and who we are and expressing that clearly to others.
That's good.
I don't have to ask if you like words, because you love them.
I think they're important.
Just so it's off of my conscience,
okay.
I did get the phone number of someone from the speed dating event that was not a match. I walked her to her car and stuff, and she was like, wow. And to everyone being like, this must be the Barnes & Noble states that's going to happen, no. It's not.
Yes, I think functionally you matched with 2 people.
Functionally I matched with 2 people.
Yep.
But actually I didn't. But now I have gotten that off the chest. Now that's not in the back of my mind as we're talking about Axel from Kingdom Hearts.
That's good. I think that would you prefer more episodes talking about Axel from Kingdom Hearts?
Just him? No.
Okay. All right. Do you have any as we approach the 2-hour mark, do you have any questions, comments, concerns, any last things you'd like to say?
Hey, I know that phrase. No, just remember when you're dating someone, you have these 2 different perspectives you can lean on, and it's not that deep, maybe. Except maybe it is, who knows? Do you have questions, comments, concerns that you would like to leave with the class?
I would say, don't judge a book by its cover. Judge it by how it makes you feel. Don't judge it by its words either. Judge it by how you feel.
We don't have emails, do we?
I think if we do, we can save them for next time.
I hope you all understand. Goodbye, everyone!
Bye.